Hey, happy Moon Day. We're back again, video 93. What's truly loved, we will to be in video 93. 93 is a big number, very important in the Kabbalah, as well as Thelema, Aleister Crowley's religion that he created. To be clear, I'm not a Thelemite. I've read a bunch of Crowley because he was a brilliant evil genius. But his life, if you study it, will prove so much of what I'm saying. You know, he was very wealthy, scion. He was in this bizarre religious cult called the Plymouth Brethren. His father died when he was very young, and he was mostly raised by a domineering mother who used to call him the Beast. And that probably explains a lot of his psychology. And you know, Thelema, the Thelemic order, although there's a tremendous amount of wisdom there, I could never embrace because it contains homosexual sex rights as its highest level 11, right? Yeah, so, but I mean, I've studied it quite extensively, and I respect Crowley's scholarship immensely. I mean, look what he did in his life. He published one of the first English translations of the I Ching, which is pretty good. He popularized and brought over so many texts of yoga, so many texts of, you know, profound magical wisdom of all kinds. And I think honestly, Crowley, who many consider to be a Satanist, knew 10 times as much about Christianity and the Bible as any Christian I've ever met. I have to say there's probably rabbis that knew more than him, though. But yeah, he was a brilliant character. Why did he choose 93 as the sacred number and as the seal of Thelema? Well, there's many reasons, but his own reason is to deal with these two words in Greek, agape and thelema, which means love and will. And the motto of Thelema often, and their password is, love is the law, love under will. Which by itself, I pretty well embrace that because it emphasizes a very important thing about equal partnerships of male and female, that they're only truly love if both partners are completely free to be in the union as they choose or not, or to depart it as they choose. And if the other partner isn't satisfying them in any way, or is domineering, or is making them unhappy or unfree in any way, that's not real love, right? Pretty obvious. But yeah, you gotta kind of tell people these things sometimes. But 93 is 3 times 31. 31 is an important number in Kabbalah because it's El, the sign of power, and a word that's often used for God. And it's also, 31 is also Lo, which means no, and all the negative commandments in the 10 Commandments start with Lo. So we see how power and will are flips of each other, right? So you either do something against the resistance and negation of other people telling you no. You can either do that or you have no free will, right? Pretty cool. So let's look at some other words that total 93. Koach Adonai, the strength of the Lord. Megen, shield. And chuppah, defense. Chuppah has 2 different meanings. I think one's maybe choppah and chuppah, but the second one is a canopy, the sacred wedding canopy where males and females unite. Theoretically, both there by free will and both there for the purpose of love. And again, we're emphasizing this sacredness of the male-female union because that's what our ritual is all about, right? And another phrase is Bechichel Yahuwah, which means the temple of Yahweh. So we see that the temple and the sacred space is where this sacred union of male and female occurs. And another key phrase or word, nakila, which means the heritage, right? Heritage is something we pass on from our ancestors to our offspring. And, you know, I have to reiterate this due to our political climate, but the only way to do that is males and females procreating and having sex. You're not going to get it otherwise. You're not going to pass on your inheritance. So then we have another key word that we're dealing with, especially in this full moon, right? Where the sun is conjuncting this star in the shin bone of Aquarius, which is said to represent the 10th patriarch in the Babylonian king list, which represents Atrahasis, which is the Babylonian version of Noah who survives the flood. So in Hebrew, Nazalo is flood. And then we also have Theathenai, which means something which is seen, right? So when you're face to face with someone in an equal union of partners or in a sexual union, you can really see them up close. You see them face to face, right? And then our final word is anake, which means a necessity. And this shows us that actually love and proper balance between the male and female is an absolute necessity for our life, for our health, for our happiness, for offspring and for society and humanity to continue to exist. We have to have this sacred union of male and female through free love and free will. So this is super important. And so, yeah, I went through a lot of the negatives already, and I don't like that. I like to be positive. I like to focus on beauty. But in order to get to this positive thing that's so often deprived to us and defamed in our society, we have to overcome the opposition and the negatives. We have to recognize the things that are obstacles to this blissful union that we want to create, right? So I guess we got to kind of focus on both, though, right here in this video, because again, it's the lunar ritual is about light and darkness, right? So we're looking at both sides. So let's look at this cult of Thelema, Aleister Crowley and stuff. So he was a very high-ranking Freemason, and you can see pictures of him with all his regalia on. And he was very fond of these Masonic temples in Mexico, which I find very interesting, because I think he was studying the Mexican serpent cult down there, and he knew that these mound builders and these Mexican pyramids are extreme points of great power. And we get into these words about power: maga, magus, Magdalene. Oh, here's an interesting thing that I can't believe I haven't gotten to yet. So Buddha's mother was called Mahamaya, right? Maha is where we get the word mega or magus. It means great, mighty, and grand, large. Maha. Mahamaya is very similar to Maga. A female magus is called a maga, and Maya means magic, and it's a weaving art of weaving illusions in a magical way. So Buddha's mother was called Mahamaya, and she's from a kingdom called Magadha, right? Just like Magdalene. Think it's a coincidence? I have a radical contention that Buddha and Christ were actually of the same exact pre-Diluvian lineage, and that's why Buddha is pictured as a white Aryan with blue eyes. In all these areas that are populated, like Tibet, where it's mostly populated by reddish-skinned people, right? Like the phoenix of the Phoenicians means red. Kind of got a little bit of red face, you know, myself, and it's in the blood. I have some Cherokee lineage, and you know, these red females from Rennes-le-Chateau gave me a lot of really red blood with lots of powerful hemoglobin, and then mixing it with the Scottish gives me a lot of vitamin D through the sunlight, minimal sunlight, right? What's interesting is Padmasambhava, who created all Tibetan Buddhism and Tantrayana and Vajrayana, was also seen as red and white. Like he was kind of pale, but he had this red flush to him, right? So I'm pretty sure this is the same bloodline lineage of these Scythian, these blue-eyed, red-haired Scythians with big beards, right? So anyway, this is just a little thesis that I have, you know. But anyway, so yeah, these red and white, these pharaohs. And some say the pyramids were originally red and white striped, and that's why we have red and white stripes on the flag. And they got these red and white colors through this enamel coating and this iron oxide pigment, right? So this calcium salt and this iron salt, right? Those are both very important salts to our blood, right? So the red and the white. So Crowley knew all about this. He studied with the Tibetan masters, and he learned all kinds of Tibetan yoga. You know, not a lot of upper-class Europeans would be willing to endure what he did, traveling all around the world, going to the Himalayas, going to Southeast Asia. Who knows where all that dude went? He definitely went to Mexico and studied with these Mexican Freemasons. And I think that was some of the most productive period of his life. But yeah, so Crowley was raised in this really abusive environment, you know, raised by his mother after his father died, and he was a product of this, you know, British, you know, what do they call it? Boarding school, which is rife with homosexuality and stuff like that. And that's probably why he was so perverted and got STDs and gonorrhea when he was in his teens, you know. And he was basically torturing animals and doing all this freaky shit. But he was born a genius. He was a chess champion, and he's pretty fluent in Latin and Greek by the time he was a teenager. And so he's very brilliant, and he knew a lot of things that no one else talks about openly. And he, because of his rebellious tendencies to subvert authority, he was quite willing to go out and publicly teach all this really highly secret shit, and sex magic being one of them. I mean, if you know anything about Victorian England and how repressive that society was, you know, you can understand Crowley's psyche. And he was a Libra also, which is, you know, all about balancing these extremes, right? So if you have an extremely repressive society, it's a kind of Libran response to that, to do the opposite of everything, do what thou wilt, right? So there's certain value in that to go against the norms of a corrupt culture, you know. But, you know, his life was not happy. He was a heroin addict for up until his death. I think he was on methadone and stuff like that. And, you know, he had a lot of STDs. None of his marriages and unions with females were happy. They never lasted. Almost all of his kids died. I think there's a couple of his surviving offspring. Some people say W is his son, George W. Bush. I pretty well believe that because, you know, if you look at the Skull and Bones and their stuff, and then Anheuser-Busch, right, the Bush family. If you look at their logo, the Budweiser logo, where it's supposed to be a B for Budweiser, it's actually a 93. It really doesn't look anything like a letter B if you look at it up close. It's clearly a 93. And these are the dudes that did 9/11 with Flight 93 and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot of Thelemites and these Crowley devotees all over the world in very, very high positions of power, and particularly in science and computing. And, you know, they used Crowley's knowledge of math to gain extreme power through great secrecy, but they're evil. Most of them are very, very evil, wicked murderers, you know. But I study Crowley. I like to learn from my enemies, you know, because, I mean, he's very powerful. His knowledge was very powerful, and he got a lot done, and he was extremely influential, and that's why he's on the cover of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and that's why, you know, Led Zeppelin was all about Crowley, and Jimmy Page bought his old house on Loch Ness, and, you know, David Bowie loved the guy too, you know, and all these people, man. Mr. Crowley by Ozzy Osbourne and stuff like that. So it's well worth studying if you don't mind all the grotesqueness and all the bad stuff around it. But yeah, you can learn a lot from the enemies, and that's what we're kind of doing. But we're trying to flip it around, and we're trying to see the good side of all these things. Love under will, right? The mutually willing equal union of male and female, you know, not a binding contract that's top down dominance, but a full equal union under will. I think that's a very good thing. And so with our moon magic, this is a big thing. Oh yeah, Crowley had a book called Moonchild about a magical ritual to create a child. And I think he actually probably created a great many of them in that case. And this ritual was attempted by L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons to create a moonchild. And they incarnate the spirit of Babylon into the world. And, you know, that rapidly produced the Manhattan Project and nuclear weapons and the Roswell crash in 1947, the same year Crowley died. And I was born in 74, so I've all had a weird destiny with Crowley. He came up early. I read his book on tarot, which still to this day I think is one of the best. He was an expert on Babylonian mythology and all these things. He knew so much, and it's all in his books. But I really don't like a lot of what he did with the cards, like changing the order. And he was encoding a lot of this gay Babylon butt sex cult into his cards. But the artist who painted the cards, Lady Frida Harris, was amazingly talented. And I still, to this day, use his cards, and I love his cards. But yeah, it's a buyer beware, because there's a lot of corruption in there, and there's a lot of negativity. But what he does do that no one can deny is that he brought the sexual yoga aspects of this cult out into the open for everyone. Because if it wasn't for him, this could have remained well hidden up until now. But he published all his books and all about it. And so anyone that reads Crowley knows about the sexual aspect of Masonic, you know, rituals and things. But let's talk about the good side, where we're trying to get to, right? We're trying to get to this place where the Messiah and the female Magdalene are equals. They have equal power. It's not a dominant submission. It's not a witch dominating over a human sacrifice male, and it's not a god dominating over a prostitute. It's a marriage of equals. That's what we're trying to get to, and we're using our moon magic for that purpose. And we're trying to imprint these ideas into our consciousness of this equality concept and this mutual respect and mutual unity and healing. And we can see how the Babylon cult in our modern world is promoting the opposite. Every kind of abortion and non-procreative sexuality and everything that defames both the male and the female. Because, okay, think about the flood, right? That was an attempt to destroy humanity and limit their procreation. But you have this Enki, this one god, this watery fish god, who tried to come and give humanity the secrets of immortality and allow them to survive the flood, like Noah and Hanok, right? It's the same story over again, and the Masons are obsessed with this pre-flood DNA. And some people with that DNA are still walking the earth, and many of them are enslaved because of their magical power, and subjected to trauma and mind control to prevent them from actualizing their true will. So don't do that.